Hello.
Hello.
All right, this is my talk in Templeton. This is my lovely host, Melanie.
Hello.
And she's hosting me at her wonderful home. And I'm about to give a talk on my book, The Reward of Not Knowing. So here's some of the people. Let's see.
Oh, you know what?
Wait. Here, maybe this will work. I'm trying to be my own videographer. We'll just put it here and hope for the best. How about that?
Yeah, it's wonderful. Yeah. Can y'all see me? I have 4 viewers.
Oh, how about that?
Let's just roll with it. Testing 1, 2. Can people hear me? Can you hear me?
Good evening. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. So I am so thrilled that Alexander is here with us tonight. For those of you who haven't heard the story of how I met him, I have to share the story, and you haven't heard the whole story. And that is, so July 2014, before I lived up here, didn't know a soul in the area, I decided I wanted to move up here. My daughter was in college in Australia, didn't need to be tethered to my ex-husband any longer, so I just decided I was going to move up here. And I put the offer on this house, and then was hungry, and I like wine, kind of looking through the internet and some visitors guides. Oh, here's one called Cass Winery, has food and wine. I'll drive out there. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm going. So I showed up, and I stand inside, all by myself, not in a soul in this area, and he happens to be pouring the wine. So we just started chatting, and the longer I drank wine, the more we talked. Kind of, and I'm eating a meal, so it's taking a while. Toward the end, he says, oh, I wrote a book. And I'm like, oh, about what? And I'm sure he said, I have a mother with multiple personality disorder. And so he wrote down his name and the book's name. He told me where to get it in Paso. Of course, I didn't know this area at all, so the street name meant nothing to me. So that was July of 2014. Fast forward, and I've been here a little over a year in the book club, realizing, oh my God, I got to pick a book. Oh my God, what am I going to pick? Oh my God, I want to pick a book that the women like, and what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And then I'm like, oh, the guy that works at Cass, he's an author. So I went out there, had a burger, thinking maybe I'd see him because I don't remember his name, and I lost that slip of paper with your name and the book name on it. I'm like, geez, I don't recognize anybody here. Okay, so that didn't work. And then November 2015, a girlfriend of mine is up from Orange County, and I said, I really need to find a book. And I want to find this local author somewhere in the streets of Paso. He told me this is in a little store somewhere in Paso. So we parked the car, and it's been raining, so I remember the roads were flooded. And I walked down the street with Thomas Hill Organics, happened to walk into the shop to the right of Thomas Hill Organics. I don't even know what the name of the shop is.
Did you have the burger there though? Because it's the burger.
Yes, yes. And I walk in, and the shop owner says, are you looking for something in particular? I said, yes, a book from a local author. I said, his mother has schizophrenia. And she's like, oh, that doesn't sound familiar. I'm like, it's a local author. He works at Cass Winery, da 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 da. She's like, no, that doesn't. But here's a great book. Here's a great book. I'm like, no, I want this book. Well, what's the name of the author? I don't know. What's the name of the book? I don't know. And I said schizophrenia, right? So anyway, she's like trying to show me all these books, and I'm like, no. And so I just go over to the bookshelf, and I pick up this book, and I'm like, I think that's it.
Okay.
But then I flip it over, and I'm like, Hawaii. I'm like, you never Hawaii? These are here. And I'm like, no, I think this is the book. So I bought the book. And I took it home and read it, and I knew it was you. And then immediately I reached out to you on Facebook. You responded instantaneously.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm doing a book club, would love to have you. And you said, absolutely, I'd love to be there. And
It's as if there's a reward of not knowing.
well, your reward is all these, I'm eating with all of these lovely ladies.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So given that I didn't know your name, didn't know the name of the book, I had the, schizophrenia versus multiple personalities wrong, but somehow I was led to this shop that I probably wouldn't have normally gone into. It smelled of incense. I don't really care for incense. I was like, everything was against me, yet I'm like, no, I'm going into this shop. And it was the first shop I walked into as well. That's the funny thing is, and I didn't even know where I was going. I'm like, what are those streets in Paso? So anyway,
Wow.
so I'm so honored to have you here, and
Thank
I enjoyed your story so much, and I kept thinking, okay, if he doesn't show up tonight, because you've got kind of a history of, moving around a lot. I thought, what if he's moved to like New York by now, right? Because it was like fall when November, December when I contacted him, right? Sure, he said, sure, no problem, be here. And I thought, oh God, what if he's moved to New York by now? What would I ask all of you ladies for a discussion topic? And I thought, you know what? We probably all had experiences where, while we were in them, didn't feel so good. But once we got out, what a great reward we got, right? Something unexpected happened or growth from within. So anyway, so I just thought it was a great story and really pleased to have you. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Melanie. Wow. So there's no, yeah.
You're all that wine too.
How do I follow up with that? There's no direct forum that I came prepared with. I'm all about shooting from the hip, so whether you just want to ask questions or have me go into a little about who I am.
Yeah.
Who am
Let's
I?
start with who you are.
Who am I? Oh. Well, I'm Alexander Demetrius. I was born Alexander Demetrius Minhadis, and Minhadis is was my father's last name, and my parents separated when we were very young, so my mother did not have an affinity for the last name Minhadis. So the first stride I made in trying to get away from a mother with multiple personality was to find something that really resonated with me as a kid. The only thing I knew were movies, and I wanted to somehow be a part of it. So when I went to my journey of trying to be an actor, I wanted a name that really popped, and I always loved the way my middle name sounded with my first name, and my mom had given me that name because she wanted to help. She wants to name me after the man who helped Christ carry the cross towards the end. Later she found out it wasn't Demetrius, it was a man named Simon. But she left it as is, and I'm glad she did. And when I was in Los Angeles and I just had new headshots done, they asked, what name do you want there? And I said, I want Alexander Demetrius. And I was so stern on making that my new persona that I legally adopted my middle name as my last name and dropped my last name. And then a mother, being as she's old school, she says, well, a mother's name should always match her son's. So she also changed her last name to Demetrius.
Oh,
Yeah. In fact, I just got back from a trip to Austin, Texas, where she currently is visiting her. We had a wonderful visit.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
What
yeah.
is she doing today? I mean, what is she?
She's in a nursing home.
Oh.
Yeah, one of the things I had to do was I have two older half-sisters and an older brother, and none of which have any relation with me because of my connection to my mom. And because I'm so close with her, they're just not close with her. And it's okay. I mean, there's no animosity between any of us, but I literally feel like an only child. And being that I've been the main decision maker in her life, there were many times, especially when I was living in Los Angeles, where I'd get calls from paramedics and police and fire departments telling me about all these scenarios that my mother would get herself into. And remotely, it was so hard to try and be responsible for that. And finally, the Adult Protective Services moved in and said, we suggest you give her up as a ward to the state. So that way, the issue now is she goes checks herself into a facility, and because she can leave of her own volition, she doesn't get the full help she needs, and then just creates this vicious cycle where she's out, then back in, and out and in. And I had to side with that. So I did, and she was in a nursing home in San Antonio, right down the road from where she raised me, in fact. And she was a little stubborn about the transition, which, God bless her, I would be too. So, then she acquiesced when they moved her to Austin.
Why did they move her to Austin?
It was somebody's decision, you know, a caregiver that had been assigned to her. So they moved her to Austin, and she finally just kind of gave into the whole thing, and has been wonderful ever since. And the types of things that the doctors tell me that she experiences, like dementia and whatnot, I don't experience when I talk to her. And even being with her as I just was, she's great. I mean, but she loves
How
her
old is
son.
she now?
So, 74.
Does she still go in and out of different personalities?
No, not around me. I've heard that when my half-sister comes around, who has a personality very similar to the one that my grandmother had, which caused all the trauma in my mother's life to begin with. So the moment my half-sister's around, it's a instant trigger to, because their personas are so similar.
Did she abuse the other siblings like she did you?
There were no other siblings. She grew up an only child.
But I'm talking about
Oh, my
yours.
mother?
Yours.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. My older brother received a lot of brute force, you might say, because he had a disturbance growing up. He was had a learning disability. He also has seizures. But there was something, my mom always said, because during her pregnancy, he was born into just the height of chaos. He absorbed a lot of that disturbance, and it manifested as he was growing up, and his disturbance triggered her disturbance, and that's why he, at the first opportunity he could, left the house. And so ultimately it was just myself and my mother.
How was your brother today?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I don't even know where he
You don't
is.
interact. Oh.
I understand. The last time I saw him was maybe 6-7 years ago in San Antonio, and he was doing okay. And but he made it clear he didn't want to have anything to do with my mother. So, and I don't blame him. I mean, given his capacity, I can understand his perspective, and it's not everybody that can just transform what I went through and see it as a blessing. But it is in going through it that gave me the capacity to see it as a blessing. So that's kind of the whole idea behind the book.
Where are you today? I mean, what do you do? Where you live, and what are you doing?
I live in Livermore, California, up north in the East Bay, yeah.
And what do you do?
I am a handyman. I work with an app or a company that started an app called TaskRabbit. You want to do your laundry or mow your grass or hang pictures or any number of tasks you can do. So I'm completely supporting myself off of that. And I really enjoy it because I garnered all of my handyman skills by doing handyman work around the house growing up.
Well, in your book, the one that was impressive to me that stands out in the book was with the old lady that you're with that gave you this home over $1 million, and you had a kind of come to Jesus in your brain and saying, I don't think I could. You had this whole thing going on with your mom as far as the car, saying, you know what, Mom, tell her that it's great, wonderful, and then you finally decided, I got to come to grips with this and come clean with her, and because of that, she just said, no more to the house. Right?
Yeah, you're not.
I mean, that was
Just lost a lot of money. Yeah,
that was huge. That's got to have been a huge thing in your life.
It was, and sometimes there are some people that learn by you just suggesting an alternate path, and there are others like myself that need to be beat over the head a few times with something really blunt to make an impact. And in either case, as long as you're growing, that that $1 million mistake wasn't a mistake at all. It was a multi-million-dollar opportunity to take an alternate path to completely enhance and enrich my life so that I can do the same for others around me.
Did you ever have any thoughts of regret that what you did, that maybe I could have?
He was just
Gosh,
you
But
were
you even thought maybe if you did, you could have maybe bought drugs or kind of gone.
Oh, I
another
would have
path,
gone
right?
off the deep end, probably for
At that
sure.
time in your life.
Because I grew up with absolutely nothing, struggling even in all of my Hollywood days, you know, taking as much food as I could from the craft services truck. And if that much money had come into my being, my gosh, sky's the limit, all of a sudden the limitations are gone, yeah, I would have gone nuts.
So you never became an actor?
Oh, I definitely was an actor, yeah.
Oh, you were?
I lay claim to that because I can point out, even if it's in the moments of just seconds on the screen, I can show you many different places. Yeah. And I also have had speaking roles in student films where I was the principal. I've done background work for student films at the University of California in Long Beach. You know, I really paid my dues. I think that I discovered that acting wasn't my strong suit. It's a really different entity when you have a camera in front of you and a boom mic and a script reader and all these people in front of you, and then somehow you're supposed to just block that out and become the character.
Yeah, behind that.
Yeah, but I fell in love with the whole writing aspect of movies and what the stories were and how they were crafted into these wonderful epic tales, either of sci-fi or love and romance. And yeah, it's spectacular, and so I got to be a part of that.
Now your book left off in Hawaii. Now, how did you get from Hawaii to Livermore?
By way of Paso.
What brought you?
So my best friend.
I knew you loved Hawaii and you wanted to
Yeah.
get there. So why did you even want to leave Hawaii?
My best friend, who I write about in the book, Katie. I don't know if I addressed her as that, but. Oh, okay. Well, she lives here in Paso. In fact, when we went on our separate ways, I went to Hawaii and she came to Paso, and she wanted to be part of the wine industry.
Okay.
So, fast forward, she ends up buying a home here and settling down, and said, "Well, you can come." I had my sights set on San Francisco, and but she thought. That was probably a little out of my league, and I'd never been there before, and I'm glad she did. So she offered up her home, said she'd get me acclimated to the area. And I came out here and started working for her boyfriend, who owns Fetch, the cab company. Yeah, so I drove a wine tour bus for him for a while. I've worked at Thomas Hill Organics in the kitchen, scrubbing the kitchen from 10 at night to 8 in the morning. And I've helped Debbie do a ton of work in that restaurant. And I've worked at several different wineries. I've cleaned houses. I've done just about anything.
So why did you leave here and?
Because I had to do all of that just to make ends meet, and that was never going to afford me the opportunity to ever write again if I'm struggling to figure out how I'm going to make it from month to month.
So did you make money off your book?
I'm sure I've made some. I think I get more kick out of receiving a royalty check, legitimate, that even if it's $21, by God, you know. There's
Did it pick up significantly last month?
I'll have to check into that. I think I do have a way of finding that out.
Have you done book clubs before?
Never. I see a huge opportunity for this.
Make sure they like wine.
Is there any chance that your book would ever become a movie?
Oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely. I don't see why not.
Is that something that you would have to?
I don't have to do anything. The more I focus on just what I'm doing right now and doing my part, it makes me more magnetic to draw things to me. So if it's in my best interest in my life's journey for that to manifest, then I will. But
I would like to see that movie.
Yeah, all right. Me too. Me too.
You should know that two of the books this group picked are coming out in movies.
Oh, well, third time's a charm.
Where do you think you inherited or whatever, or maybe it's just main strength and awkwardness or whatever that you are so steadfastly positive?
I'm a Sagittarius. I'm told we're optimists all the way, which I have always been like this, even in the experiences that I had growing up, which
I know, I mean, it was like all through the book.
there was
I'm going
something.
to myself, I'm thinking I would be so pissed.
Yeah.
I mean, even though, like in your mother's case, I mean, she couldn't help the fact that she did the multiple personality thing,
Yeah.
and some of the personalities were nicer than others and all that. I mean, but how do you just, and I know I've read so much about forgiveness and understanding and all that, but I mean, really and truly, what do you think you attribute your indefatigable positivity to?
Good for you, Marty.
No, I mean, really.
Well, my mom said that I was the only child that she actually prayed for, because during the time when I was conceived, she was going through the apex of the turmoil in her life with the multiple personalities, the amnesia. She had no idea of where she was, and the only thing she knew was some music. But she also had a strong foundation in the church, in many churches, in praying and religion. So she said she prayed for help, and that's when I came into view, you might say. And she always told me that story, and that somehow made an impression on me, because I wanted to be a good son. And I wanted to do whatever was necessary to help. I don't know if it was the suggestion of her telling me that story that put me in the mindset of being that way, but I was my mother's right hand, and as much as I was impacted by her illness, I was driven more so by loyalty to stay with her and do whatever I had to do. And so you might say that what I did is nothing extraordinary. It's really the mark of a hero, and all a hero is somebody who does something that goes beyond the normal realm of behavior in a normal human being. It's being afraid and going forward anyway. And I had many experiences. Yeah, it was zero expectation. Yeah.
Well, some of it, there's an aspect to that is peacekeeper. That there's so the unpredictability of the whole thing on a daily basis, like walking on eggs. Yeah, I mean there have.
It's wonderful.
Huh?
It's still serving me to this day.
Oh, I know it does, but it's very exhausting.
No, my gosh, it's exhilarating.
Think so?
As a child, though?
Because I never had any consistency in my life.
Right.
I was digging ditches for planting our food one day, and chopping wood for heat the other day, and painting, and doing electrical work, and all of that stuff has sustained me in Hawaii and in California, and it has introduced me to all these amazing experiences. So I cannot discredit the steps that happened before this one at this very moment, because they're the ones that brought me to this. So I look at everything as just an opportunity that has fallen into my lap, and the only thing I lack is the understanding to see what the blessing is in the supposed.
Especially at the time.
Yeah, but it's fun to take the journey and find out.
Okay, now, you've had relationships with women, as I saw in the book. Okay, now do you see yourself getting married, having children, or because of the situation with your mother, do you fear even having a relationship enough to get married and have children?
No, relationships are where I grew the most.
So do you think you see yourself getting married? Do you have a relationship now that looks promising?
No, because my biggest relationship is with myself. I'm finally taking a time to, I've seen the pattern that I do, which is to find a woman whose life is just chaotic enough that it'll keep me from exploring beyond my borders.
and I'll be committed to that person.
Does
And
that scare you though? Because
No.
based on what you had with your mother, does that scare you? Do you think you will have issues with?
yeah, it was comfortable when I wasn't conscious of it, and now that I'm conscious of it, I'm even more comfortable with it because I just see it as it is.
Interesting. Okay.
And so the pattern is, you know, just finding a suitable, you might say, womb to feel cozy enough just to make it through life.
So you want to have children? You see yourself?
Not necessarily. I mean, I would like to mentor children, and I myself have opted out of having children altogether by having a vasectomy 10 years ago. And,
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
so that's not part
and
of
the doctor,
Why
first
did you
thing,
do that?
I had a moment of truth. I was back then dating a lot and very reckless about who I was dating.
Yes,
I would totally avoid red flags because my co-pilot did all the thinking for me. So, yeah. So, long story less boring. I meet this girl, and there are red flags all over the place, but I charge forward anyway. And it had been a moment when I, against my better judgment, failed to use protection. One day, following this, I get a phone call saying, well, we need to talk. And immediately my mind said, she's pregnant. When we meet, she says, well, what do you think it is? And I said, you're pregnant. And she says, I've been tested 3 times. And it's all come out the same, and I even got it from my doctor. So my immediate response was, well, whatever you want to do. But the only person I told about this was a roommate that I was living with at the time. And she said, well, this girl, of what I know about her that you've told me, has been wanting to clinch you down from the beginning. Now she's got leverage to do so, and she's messing with it. And she would tell me to look for certain things that this girl would do behavior-wise, and I would spot those things. So she said, you have to get really upset and try to stand up for yourself, because I never knew how to do that. And so she actually, my friend we would be driving down Santa Monica Boulevard, and she would say fuck. And I couldn't know, I didn't, when I said it, it had no oomph to it. It was just very flat. Because I just didn't know, I was so the epitome of satisfying everybody's wants and needs. How could I ever?
Everybody, but not yourself.
Yeah, precisely. But after some practice, I got, and the key was, she said, this girl is fucking with your life. And that gave me the courage to stand up to her, say what I needed to say. And the funny thing was, as soon as I was stern with her, she was completely calm. Wow. The moment I was passive, she was all over me. And so I explained that we're both too young. We're still figuring ourselves out. I don't think that bringing a child into this sort of turmoil is ideal. And so she agreed to have it terminated. And I stayed with her the whole time. And it wasn't a decision that when I reached it, I said, oh my gosh, I dodged that bullet. It was extremely hard because I'll never forget after the fact being at the beach and seeing this little boy playing in the sand. And I thought, my God, that could be my child. So I thought the way that I'm going to atone for that life, that you might say deterred, because you never stop life, it always finds a way, is I am going to be stern in my decision that I'm not going to have children. And I'm not going to buy into this blood is thicker than water, because I grew up with children in foster homes and children's shelters who weren't going to have a parent to come, and would take anybody as a parental guide to help them make it through this life. And so that's the kind of vow that I took to, I don't have to spread my legacy by spreading DNA, but I spread ideas, which are bulletproof.
Great, good for you.
Were you fearful that you might pass on your mother's?
Yeah, that too,
That's
yes,
part of it.
absolutely, yeah.
How old are you today?
41.
Okay.
Just a baby.
So do you have, but when you have relationships, do you have women that say, I want to have a family, and that's kind of now not going to happen? Is that an issue that?
It hasn't been an issue so
Okay.
far because
Okay.
I'm really not putting myself out there in that regard.
Okay.
You know, I go on dates and whatnot, but
Right.
I have finally, through titanic effort, gotten back in alignment with what I feel my life's purpose is.
Now you have an older brother, is a blood brother, right?
Yeah.
100% not, has he gotten married and had children?
Not that I know of.
Okay,
No.
not, okay, so this isn't being spread, the stuff that you're talking about with your mother hasn't gone.
Yeah, and even I have the oldest sibling. She
The
has
house.
she has a lover that named Becky that they've been together forever. So I don't know if they're having children.
Right.
She's got her own children,
Yeah.
that's right.
So you're basically afraid of having a child because of your childhood with your mother, I'm sure. And then, I mean, I can't imagine, if you fall in love with some woman, and all of a sudden this woman comes into your life, somebody, kind of cute like me, all of a sudden she comes into your life and you go, hey, maybe I would love to have a child with her. But this other girlfriend you had, she obviously probably reminded you a bit about your mother. This other girlfriend who made you feel like you needed to have a vasectomy, not have another child. And then you see this little kid on the beach and you think, well, probably I should have done that. But don't you think you shouldn't have done that? Because, hello, you ruined it. Although I think
Just for the record, I don't think you're right.
I think we actually connect that back together. So if you find a cute person in your life, then you might really want a curse. But I'm thinking you don't want to because of what you went through with your mother.
Well, not only that, but the world's a little overpopulated. I mean, it honestly is. And I don't ever disagree with anyone's right to choose to have a child. Absolutely not. But if I want to be part of the solution, I'm like Gandhi, and I'm being the change I wish to see in the world. So why bring another child in when there are already an infinite number of children in foster homes and shelters in different
Once
countries?
you're gone, and once the rest of your family's gone, you have your name and your legacy.
Who's gonna know?
It's all gone.
Yeah,
Who's gonna know?
yeah. Who's gonna
I
know?
have a question, I'd like to change the subject.
Sure.
You have been influenced by Joseph Campbell.
Uh-huh.
Who is he and what?
Oh,
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that.
Yeah.
It seems that he has guided a good part of your thinking.
Oh, yeah.
Is he a
Indeed, yeah.
philosopher or?
He was during his lifetime, he was one of the world's foremost authorities on comparative religion and mythology. And he taught comparative religion at Sarah Lawrence College. And through his work in mythology, he discovered certain narratives that showed up in mythologies from civilizations in completely unrelated in countries. And he recognized a theme that was consistent in all of these stories when it was relative to a hero or a would-be heroine or hero, which is the way my life story unfolds in that same sequence of events. He called it the hero's journey. When a hero goes out into a quest, he feels like, this isn't the whole story. There's some incongruities here. I got to find out for myself. And then he crosses the threshold into the unknown and will immediately be initiated into a new mindset or physical being by mentors who come into their lives and evoke through challenges qualities that the hero may find even peculiar to themselves. And then that's wonderful.
Ding dong.
So,
Alright, do I help?
So can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Are you looking at my forehead or are you looking at me in my eyes?
Oh, your eyes, absolutely. That's a good question. Oh, that's
She said,
wonderful.
what was the question?
That was from the
If I was actually looking at her eyes or her forehead.
That's in the book.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful.
Her rides here.
When you were, it was very nice to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you as well.
Good luck in your endeavors.
I was thinking about when you were living in the little basement apartment.
Yes.
And you were listening to the DVDs over and over again of this,
Joseph Campbell.
yeah. How many DVDs did you have? Was it just one over and over? Or was
No, I think it was 4.
a series?
It was a series that came out in the 80s by Bill Moyers on PBS called The Power of Myth.
And those were, you might say, my introduction into his way of thinking, which also led to thinking that is connected to Carl Jung and Freud, and ultimately it spread out into religions to show the connectivity that all religions actually have.
Do you still meditate?
Oh, every day, every
And do you
day.
do sound? Use sound?
No, life is a meditation.
No.
Most of it unintentional, you know,
But
most
I mean, do you
people.
use voice or vocal or sound?
Like Holmes?
Yeah.
No.
No.
You might say I do, in that I sing Sinatra almost every day in the car. Yeah.
I like your style.
Yeah.
I like the last sentence.
Of your parents?
I think so. I've never sung professionally, but I've done belted out many a tune at Pine Street.
I heard.
Yeah.
I just heard you outside.
You did?
Yeah, you were singing it.
Oh, I was? All right.
I love the last sentence in your book.
A ship is safe in a harbor, but that's not what ships are built for.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's very cool.
So you're writing another book. Could you give us an idea of what it's going to be about?
Yes, I am a fan of writing of the experience, so I'm not really a nonfiction person. I like actually putting myself out there, because in doing so, I've heard it said that, well, how can you write some of the things you did and put yourself out there and make yourself so vulnerable? But that's the task of an artist. We're just the messenger. And in order for us to connect with other beings who need to be raised out of the lower depths, you might say, we need to say, hey, there's been somebody else out there who has your same thing. And I'm a beacon of light, so go towards the light and then find the light in your own self. And so I look at the circumstances that I grew up as secondary. The journey has always been primary. You know, when my goals that I set out for myself keep getting farther and farther away, then I realize that the real goal is the journey. And it's not bad. So,
That's going to be.
I think that's great.
yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
So what are some of your goals?
Well, I want to utilize the silver tongue I've been blessed with, you might say, to be part of a movement. I feel a growing movement for people to be more connected with not only themselves, but with their environment and with the whole mystery of being, of which we're kind of losing sight because we're so focused on these little electronic devices that are taking all of our attention away from one another, where all the radiance of being is shining through anyway, and we're being dazzled by just something that's only temporary and shimmers for a little while, but is not everlasting. These sort of experiences are everlasting because this is connecting, you know, with people. So, did I answer the question? That's great.
You know what? You know, one thing though that honestly, I don't know, I mean, I can't imagine what your childhood was like, but I have to say this, that your mother, for all the, and what a challenge for her. I mean, what a challenge for her, but still I mean, obviously intelligent.
Yeah,
No question about that. That she even, I mean, she still, I mean, like that she, you know, enrolled you in Montessori as an example. I mean, that's just an example, but, and then she couldn't afford to do it very long, but the thing is that somewhere in there, there was just, for whatever was going on or whatever you saw or experienced from her behavior and whatever, I mean, there's just intelligence in there. You just, what a
Teacher.
experience to live with people coming in and out of your life, out of your own person?
Marty, didn't you know that genius borders on insanity?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay, so she probably if she's still alive, is a very intelligent person. And although she took out of her angst on you, which is unfortunate, but she also had another side to do right by you.
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
unfortunate part is that you waited maybe so long to leave the situation. Maybe it affected you in certain ways that make you run from one thing to another.
It gave him so much knowledge. I
Yeah.
think that the bottom line
Yeah, well, that too.
it gave him so much knowledge in life.
You know, the fortitude that I was committed to a woman who was my greatest tormentor, and yet I wouldn't give up, is the exact same fortitude that is transformed and is now taking the same commitment to do this journey of
Right.
spreading my ideas. So I couldn't have this if it weren't for that.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
that's good that you do feel that that's contributed to your effort, and that's good. That's very good. Have you ever been analyzed by a psychiatrist?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
no, seriously, I have to say that honestly, I said, well, I want to meet this guy, but there are some questions I'm afraid to ask him because it may be embarrassing or...
No, my God.
I know.
Oh, low battery. Oh, we'll just keep going until we can't go anymore.
Wait, make sure you point the camera at Marty so he can use my voice.
Yeah. There we are. You're on candid camera.
I've been deputized to hold the one.
I mean, there's this, you have gone so, through so much, I mean, there were a lot of people that would have had your life that would have never, if they didn't have the intelligence, seriously, think about this. If they hadn't had the intelligence to even care about how it influenced their behavior or their outlook or their take on things, so with that kind of intelligence, I mean, it's had to have like occurred to you that that you might develop. Well, you know what though? Here's the thing. Let me ask you this: is multiple personality? That's not a genetic thing, is it?
No.
See, that's not a
Some
genetic
of us
thing.
don't think about inheriting it.
Yeah.
I bet that somebody in her family was kind of psychotic.
Oh yeah, her mother.
Yeah. I don't think she was multiple personality. I think she was schizophrenic. But
Yeah. Well, that's kind of borderline.
Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, if you did check yourself into a facility at one time, and so did they, and they did a...
Wait, wasn't that because you wanted a place to stay and food?
Well, partially, yeah. But might as well get checked out while I'm there.
Right, I mean, they did some interviewing of you. and
Oh,
they did,
absolutely.
yeah, some diagnosis.
Yeah.
And then what was your take on, because it seems like, I remember, you kind of intervened for one of the other patients.
Yes.
And
Oh, yeah.
maybe had a different opinion of how the other employees of the facility were dealing with that situation that you maybe didn't agree with.
Do y'all know the story she's referring to?
Yeah. Why don't you share this?
So, one of the ways I thought I would avenge my so-called horrible life from my mother is to check myself into a mental institution so that I could solidify the fact that, you know what, you drove me to the crazy house. And so I checked myself into a mental ward.
using one of the tricks that my mom used to use, checking herself into the mental ward, which was saying, I was having tea with Benjamin Franklin, and he was telling me about, how he thinks that pink should be in fashion this year, or whatever. And so they would get her in. So the same thing with me, as I got in saying that I wanted to kill myself. And I hadn't given any thought to how I'd do it, so when he asked me, have you thought about it, I went into action, and I saw his tie, I saw the chair, so I was like, hang myself. And I was so proud that I popped up with it so quickly that but I guess it was that zeal I had in my eyes that really just said, well, you're going in. So I was taking.
Were you afraid you might not get out though?
Oh, I didn't care about that. I knew I would get out because I knew I wasn't crazy.
Well, I know, but
Yeah, but
anyway, go ahead.
Somebody convinced you, they convinced you indefinitely.
Yeah, but if I was committing myself, I can leave with my own. So, I committed myself into this institution and indefinitely. And I was seen by a psychiatrist, and I was started on Prozac. And the experience that was the game changer for me is I grew up painfully shy. Being in front of a crowd, I couldn't fathom it. I was always hiding to be not seen or heard.
You couldn't look anybody in the eyes.
Oh yeah, not just a forehead. Come a long way. So the fact of me raising my voice and making a big deal about something was something I couldn't even conceive of until this very moment. And there was a gentleman who was to become my bunkmate that he was a boxer, and he'd received one too many blows to the head, and so he wasn't quite right, and he was suffering from a lot of back pain as well. One day we're in the ward, and I hear this screaming coming from our room, and there he is, laying on his back in excruciating pain, and there was something in his suffering that was so great that it compelled me to just lose sense of all the fears I had about who's going to look at me if I raise my voice or whatnot. And immediately I just made a switch and started calling out for help from the nurses, aides, and whoever could help. And I was over this gentleman to protect him, you might say, even at risk of harm to myself. And the nurses came and they had to pull me away from him because I was just so stuck on. All of my fears just went out the window. As soon as I heard him screech, I remember leaping over the couch to go to his side. And that was something I'd never experienced before. I was always waiting to be told what to do. And so when the doctor interviewed me, I told him about this phenomenon that happened. He said, oh, it's just a part of your medication, no big deal. And he blew it off as nothing. But I took it, that was a very transformative moment for me, because I, in that moment, recognized that me and that other are one. And whatever I needed to do to protect that was what I would do. And it reminds me of a similar story that Joseph Campbell told, because he spent the latter part of his life on Oahu. And he tells this story. There's this road on Oahu called the Pully, and people go up to the top of the Pully, and it's a great wall of mountains, and the north wind blows in from there, and people like to go up there to get their hair blown around, or they go up there to commit suicide. It's kind of like the Golden Gate Bridge out here, might as well make a big thing of it. So one day, this patrol car is going up the Pully Road, and there's this man clearly, visibly about to jump. And so the patrol car stops, and policeman 1 runs out of the car and grabs the man as he's about to jump, and is himself being pulled over until policeman number 2 comes around and grabs the 2 and pulls them back to safety. And they asked this policeman, what compelled you to grab the guy? You would have lost your life. And he said, If I had not saved that man, I couldn't have lived another day in my life. And so what happened to that man? I mean, all of his hopes and fears for life and his goals and dreams just vanished, and in an instant he was about to go. And that to me is a recognition that you and the other are one. And so ultimately what I want to do is amplify that so that we all recognize that we're really just the same energy playing through different forms.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's funny too, is like when you consistently meditate, which I don't know why I don't do that, because when I do, I know the difference. But honestly, when you do consistently meditate, there's no question that there's no difference between you, me, the tree, the bug. There is no difference.
Yeah.
No.
Well, you know, all of life is a meditation, most of it unintentional. A lot of us, like I was, meditating on where my money was coming from or where it was going to go, but that's a level of meditation. Yeah, and so when you, something that Joseph Campbell taught me is, there's this word Om. It's called the four-syllable word. It shows up in Hinduism and Buddhism. It is called the sound of the universe. It's comprised of A, U, M, and Ah starts at the back of the throat, U fills the mouth, and closes at the mouth. The fourth element in Om is the silence out of which it comes and back into which it goes. And so you might say Om suggests to our ears that radiance that is the sound of the universe. For example, there was scientists that did this test in, I think it was the 80s. They put the trajectory of the rotation of the planets around the sun into a computer and transposed those speeds into a sound made from a vibration. And so when they converted those speeds into sounds, you had in the closer lying regions high-pitched sounds of in the middle, more lower pitched sounds because the vibration is slower. Towards the very end, those are like the bass. So you have the high-pitched, sopranos in the center, and the tenors in the middle, and the bass in the back. And that's the sound of this universe. And it's a sound of all the universes. It's a great polyphonic sound. And so you have Om, which suggests it to our ears, or if you look at a prism and see a light come through and then it breaks into the rainbow, you're seeing that that's how the one plays through the many. And so you're always reminded of this connection that you have to the whole of creation. Seems to me.
But you know what? Just the vibration of Om, even if you do it at the end of yoga, when they do an Om, that Om with a lot of voices is, I'm not sure, I think it's the vibration of it. There's just something about that is.
Well, Om, when pronounced properly, you pronounce all the vowel sounds. And consonants are simply regarded as interruptions of Om. Just as, all of us are broken images of the one image. So.
That's why I asked you if you sound when you meditate.
Yeah, I look at meditation in a different way, in that it's not relegated to just one day for Sunday, you might say, but it is put into the whole of my life. When I was at Cass Winery, one of my meditations was doing pump overs, connecting these hoses to the bottom of these huge tanks, and in order to keep the fermentation going, you have to pump the juice from the bottom of the tank over to the top of the tank and get it churning and get that yeast converting sugar into alcohol. And I would meditate on the idea of being an alchemist and part of that whole process. And then you can, when you look back over your life, even at the age I'm at, it seems to have had an order to it, as if it were composed by someone. And those events that when they occurred seem merely accidental and occasional and just something that happened, turn out to be the main elements in a consistent plot. And just as your dreams are composed by an aspect of yourself of which your consciousness is unaware, so your whole life has been composed by the will within you. And just as those people whom you met by chance became effective agents in the structuring of your life, so you have been an agent in the structuring of other lives. And the whole thing gears together like one great big symphony, everything influencing and structuring everything else.
It's hard to recognize and acknowledge that is kind of our responsibility of life.
Yes.
And to expose, to become part of other people's lives.
It's not so hard, you just said it. And that's something that I feel people really are on the verge of wanting. I have worked for the wealthy, and I have seen so much pain in their lives, and they have money to buy absolutely anything they want, and yet their cabinets are filled with prescription drugs because there's a disconnect between them and living a life with purpose, and everything is material, and as long as it's material, it's temporary. And that's what religion is. The word itself comes from the root religio, meaning linking back the phenomenal person to a transcendent source. And so if you say it is the one life in all of us, then my life has been linked back, religio, to the whole. And so religions, when properly observed, are a constellation of metaphors that represent fields of experience or planes of consciousness that are potential in ourselves. And so you can look at for example, the story of the Great Flood, and if reading biblical text concretely reduces their value. It makes them into newspaper reports, and so what? There was a great flood, so what? But if you look at it in terms of water being representative of everything coming out of water and going back into water, and the coming of chaos and the loss of balance and the end of a certain psychological posture and whatnot, then it begins to talk to you again. And so all religions are essentially, it's a purely literary problem. They're being read in terms of prose instead of poetry. In terms of, it's reading a metaphor in the terms of the denotation rather than the connotation. And what these metaphors are symbols pointing to a truth, not the truth, but a truth. So
I have to say that, I'm going to be honest here, I found this book was hard to read, only because I felt sorry for you. Because I felt that you were basically psychologically abused. You went through this turmoil with your mother. Of course, thank God you have your mother. I mean, boys love their mothers, the mothers love their sons. I mean, my son is so dear to me. But the fact that you were wrapped in this turmoil, it's like this tennis ball that's come unwrapped, I felt sorry for you. And I thought, when is he ever going to get out of this? How is he going to turn out? So how are you today? I mean, are you ever going to get married? I know that you're not going to have children, although you can fix that so you can have children.
Yeah, I've been told that.
Or he's an operating nurse.
Yeah.
But I felt so bad for you. I wanted to stop reading that. I mean, I just finished it today because it was so hard for me to read because I felt so bad for you because you were abused.
Then I did my job well.
Oh, you did your job well. Tell
If you felt bad for me, my gosh, that's my job is to evoke that from you.
Yeah,
and the little boy, you talked to me as though I went through it, but I didn't, because my mind, my body is completely different. That little boy sacrificed his life so that I could be here. So because of his sacrifice, I'm available.
And you're brilliant. And
as a result of that little boy who was scared.
I mean, I think this is so great to be able to hear this story.
Oh, thank you.
I think so many of us have things in our past that have happened and we don't talk about them.
Yeah.
And I think it's absolutely fantastic that you have shared your life with us.
Every sinner has a future and every saint has a past.
I enjoyed it.
Wonderful, thank you.
I mean, I wasn't saying that to be.
Oh, I understand, and I welcome those perspectives
I mean,
because
I mean, my heart was out to you. I mean, hello, all of us has gone through turmoil, just like you said. I mean, we've all had problems with our families, but you, I mean, you stuck by your mother, and you turned out still okay. So that's great.
Yeah.
And you wrote a book.
So I thought it was interesting that I met him pouring wine, right? I just found him to be this interesting, articulate, personable person,
And he is.
right? And then at the end, he's like, "Oh, I wrote a book." So I guess
my
my
fan
first
club right
experience,
there.
right? Because I met this person, and then learned the story.
See,
You all
that's
heard the
it.
story, and then
That's
met
it.
that person.
It is, yeah. But it does
Yeah.
like I heard the story as a little boy, you were very, very positive. Like on your little tasks, collecting the asphalt and putting that, to make your driveway, but also then building little buildings or whatever, creating structure out of the extra asphalt pieces or whatever, but being pleased with that. And it seems like everything you did as a task, even as a little person, you were very positive about. It wasn't like, oh, you were mad and, oh, I hate the person that told me to do this. You were just positive about
that's
it.
what
And that shows today. He's not his mother.
That's something
You know what I mean?
I find this is a
His mother.
perfect opportunity to share this thought with all of you, which you might say is the basis of this whole book. That positive attitude is not mine. It's the inherent childlike wonder that you see in all brand new babies who have no connection to this world yet. And their link to it is what we give them. A lot of times we pass on just the same old story and they just echo it on. But before that reaches them, pure bliss. And so what I did is not unique to myself. If you're a baby born in any life form, there is an energy, you might say, that is tuned to a higher vibration, you could say, that is beyond sadness. And that is inherent in every child. I think that I was more in tune with it because I grew up isolated in the country, alone with this woman, and I didn't have any other influences around
Do
me.
you think that was a similar situation to your older brother or your younger sisters? Do you feel that they were that way just because they were children also, and that they should have been exhibiting that? Or do you think you were maybe a little different and had your own unique?
Yeah, I mean, are they all as positive as you are?
Well, I'll tell you this
So
one
that's what
story
I mean. You
of,
were positive in your own unique way.
Yeah.
there was a story written about these twin brothers who, one ended up in prison, one ended up a successful attorney, both the product of an alcoholic father. And the interviewer who interviewed them both independently asked the same question without the other person knowing what their response was going to be. And shockingly enough, these brothers independently said the same response to, with growing up with a father like you had, why did you become how your life turned out? And they each said, with a father like I had, what else could I become? And something in one brother said, I can become this out of that experience. And then something in the other said, I can become that. And they're both valid perspectives because they show that everything in the field of time is opposite. And when you see that one drives one this way and one drives the other, it made me realize what a devil and an angel is. And all a devil is an angel suffering from its own hunger and thirst. And just like I've had pains in me that I've started off so angelic, but I was craving something that was coming and being generated from myself, not from without, but from within, and I refused to give it any attention, it became its opposite and became the devil aspect. So whatever you push down is going to come back up. And there's this story in it comes out of Persia, and it's their spin on the fall of Lucifer. In the
the Persian name for Satan is Iblis. And so the standard story, why was Satan kicked out of heaven? Well, it's said that when God created the angels, he told them to bow to no one other than himself. And then God created man, whom he regarded as a higher authority than the angels, so he told the angels to bow to man. And Lucifer would not bow. Now in the Christian tradition, it's interpreted as this is the egotism of Satan. He would not bow. But in the Persian interpretation, he could not bow because of his love for God. He could only bow to God. And so God says, get out of my sight. Now the worst of the pains in hell, is so far as hell has been described, as the absence of the beloved. So how does Iblis sustain his situation in hell with all the turmoil and whatnot? It's by the memory of the echo of God when God said, go to hell. And that's the greatest pain that one can know, is being separated from the one they love. So in the Persian tradition, Satan is God's greatest lover, and he's away from that which he loves. So that's the whole idea behind myth, is that other mythologies, particularly Eastern, their gods are not so much personified, they're more elemental, like the powers of nature. And so I resonate with these stories because they're resonant of the Native American stories of the people who were here before them, who did not see man as the weaver of life, but saw man as merely a strand in the web of life, and whatever he does to the web, he does to himself. So there's that beautiful I-thou relationship, to where this wonderful greeting in India, when the two hands are together, it's the recognition of the two separates becoming one, and the divinity in me recognizes the divinity in you. And so when I come into a home, I am visiting another deity, you might say. So, and by gosh, they treat you that way, and you feel it by the hospitality that I've received in some of these homes. So there's just an opportunity that I have found to continue to propel this message that other people that are doing this are concerned to render, which is to help all of us get on the same page so that we can reverse a lot of the damages, you might say, we've been doing to not only our environment, but to one another. And why not? I mean, everything in my life has prepared me for this. And, the idea behind marriage is you take somebody who nothing can frighten me off from this thing. So you have bridled yourself, you might say, to this energy, female, that is going to groom you along your journey. And so what I've done is I've taken that commitment and I've taken it to another cause, because you can marry a person or a cause. And I feel there's a greater need for this cause because I've always felt that I belong to the people, not to a person. My body is the earth and my head is in the stars. So I just see my connection with everything, and it just makes the world so big. And the less I have, the more I attain, because I'm not concerned with taking care of things that aren't going to serve me. I'm just concerned with
Temple.
Yeah, everybody, yeah, absolutely. The inside reflects the outside, and so every time I move somewhere I would always remodel it and make it into the coziest place I could. Yeah.
So do you have a big house now?
I live in a big house, but I still rent one room, and it's all I need, because I found that I can, my use for a relationship right now is not as paramount as my use to get my ass in gear and get this message and my work out there. And I need to stay light. And I've been nomadic, and I've never owned furniture. I've always moved places where I've either slept on an air mattress or places already furnished. But I've never felt settled because there's something that's pushing me. And when the opportunity presents itself that I'm meant to slow down, then I will. But until then, I gotta stay light because I'm on a journey. I'm being, you might say, responding to a call
that we're all being called upon. Some of us are listening and some of us are shutting it out, but it's still echoing the same thing. So, yeah.
We're all listening. We're listening.
All right.
Now, where do you see yourself 5 to 10 years from now?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Right where I'm at right now.
The reward.
Present.
Well, how old are you?
41.
41. So 5 to 10, you'll be 51.
Mhm.
So, hello, you gotta get it together.
That's not why.
Well, why did you?
I don't know, because usually when you ask a question like that, like I can ask that, what do you perceive in the future that will make you feel happy like you feel today? What do you feel?
It's doing exactly what I'm doing right now.
Now, your writing is interesting, but are you taking writing classes?
No, and I want to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I write, I'm not taking it.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting paragraph and everything, but it would do you well if you want to continue writing to take writing classes at a university.
Absolutely.
And these paragraphs of interest that are very interesting, you can evolve into something like a story about what you propose to do in the next 5 to 10 years.
Absolutely.
It's only a suggestion.
Sure, thank you for that.
But marriage, that's, marriage is...
Coming from someone who's been married 53
years.
53 years.
What a better word! It'll be 53 years. It's a very give and take marriage.
You don't have to get the break. I mean,
No, he doesn't have to have kids. He doesn't
Well,
have to get married.
They got it all figured out.
You did the right thing. Hold a second.
Thank
Thank you so much.
you. Oh, my pleasure.